Hi, everybody. So I'm thinking a lot about my dad. It would have been his 100th birthday yesterday. I know, right? He liked numbers, so he would have called it 2 squared times 5 squared. But you're going to know more about that in a minute. My dad, like back when I was a kid, we did not have words like neurodivergent. So when people describe my father, it was more like, that's Tommy. He was like, he could multiply 3-digit numbers by 3-digit numbers in his head, which he would do on request, or when there was no request, and people were trying to talk about something else. But he loved chess. Now, my father was a teacher. He taught, guess what? Math. And he coached a chess team in the inner city on the south side of Chicago, Chicago Vocational High School. And he would take those kids all over the state to play in tournaments. So he would take, it was an inner city school. Let me give you a visual. My dad did not dress for success, okay? Like he had wide feet, but he wouldn't buy wide shoes. Like he bought regular shoes, and he would slit them and then wrap tape around them. And he liked to have at least 5 pockets on his shirt, but he'd just buy like a polo shirt and have my sister sew like random pieces of fabric. You know, he was eccentric. And so he'd take these kids, this team from Chicago Vocational, and now this was the 70s, and so the kids would be wearing like the bell bottoms and platform shoes. And do you remember those Afro picks with the fist? You know, and they would go to these like lily white suburban affluent schools, and he wrote a chant, and he'd have them march in doing this chant. Do you guys want to hear it? It was knights to the center, rooks on the 7th, queen side majority, remote past pawn. He wrote songs about chess too, but I'll sing it after because I don't have time. But you know, I asked, like, they were amazing. The 1970s, they were state champs in 74, 75, 76. They were state champs, and I used to, I mean, you could not beat those kids. You could not beat them. And I remember asking, like, Dandridge was board 1, this extremely good-looking chess player, and I was the same age as them and had a kind of a crush on him. But anyway, I was like, Dandridge, like, aren't you embarrassed, like, marching in with this? He said, no, man, Feinberg, he's cool. And every time they'd win a game, they'd all come over to the house for pizza and play cards. Anyway, so here's where that's background. Here's the real story. Fast forward 30 years, my dad has retired from teaching, and he used to go play chess on summer evenings. There was a little courtyard in a neighborhood called Hyde Park, which is kind of an affluent neighborhood on the south side of Chicago. There was a brick courtyard, Harper Court, surrounded by little boutique shops, and there were built-in chess tables. And my dad would go in the summer and play chess, and all his former students would come, hang out, play Skittles. You know, they were adults now. And then in 2004, the Harper Court Merchant Association decided they were going to remove the chess tables. They said that the chess players were creating a disturbance. Right. Like they didn't say it was racially motivated, but it was racially motivated. Although, to be honest, they were noisy. Like, my dad had this thing, anytime he'd take a pawn, he'd yell, jump! So, you know, I mean, there was that, but it was racist. Like I was talking to this woman, she owned a boutique lamp store, and we were standing kind of looking over at all these guys playing chess, and she goes, they learned it in jail. I'm like, Mrs. Calick, that's not true. Like, I knew all these kids, right? Dandridge, by this time, he'd gotten a master's degree. He was running a department at UC Hospital, and Coleman, board 2, was a professor at Kennedy King College. And I was like, I'm sorry, Mrs. Kelly, they learned it at Chicago Vocational High School. But they decided to get rid of the chess tables. So my dad was not having it. He's 81 years old by this time, and he decided to organize a protest. So he went down there with a card table and a chessboard and a poster board that just said, "We shall not be moved." So the opposite of the theme, sorry, but anyway. And his idea, he thought he was going to get arrested and there'd be a worldwide outcry. You know, people in Johannesburg would be marching, "Free Tom," and that he wanted to be a cause celeb. That was his goal. So he set up this protest, and I walked over there to see how it was going, see what was going on, and nothing was. He was just this little old man in this 5-pocket shirt sitting in the sun, and nobody was paying any attention to him. So finally, somebody called the cops, like I did. And so the cops came, but instead of arresting him, it turned out one of the policemen had gone to Chicago Vocational, and he was like, "Hey, Mr. Feinberg, how's it going?" And instead of arresting him, they bought him a root beer float and a bag of Tootsie Rolls. So he's sitting there, but eventually word got around, and eventually the other kids from CVS started coming, and then their friends, and then so on and so forth. And a real protest did happen, and he wasn't arrested, but he did get his picture in the Hyde Park Herald with the caption, "Chicago chess legend Tom Feinberg." So he was happy about that, but they lost, and they removed the chess tables, and then a couple years later, my father passed away, and then a couple years after that, they completely destroyed Harper Court. They tore everything down, and they built a big Hilton hotel. And then a couple years after that, the kids from the 1974 chess team got together and organized a Tom Feinberg Memorial Chess Tournament in the Hilton Hotel that was right where the chess tables used to be. So my dad was a little different, but he did make a difference. Thank you.